This is Billy Moyer. Now, at 21, Billy started a leadership consulting business with his dad. Well, today, that same business is SOS Leadership. Billy is the CEO of a consulting firm with a network of over 40 coaches all across the US and 3 different countries. Billy has also published 5 books, and he's personally served as the C-suite for over 5 different companies. So today, we're gonna talk about how he built a network of 40 coaches who consult for him. We're also gonna cover how he solves problems for free just so that clients will pay him for years. And then we're gonna talk about the private equity play that he's building inside his own consulting firm and a bit about the bad deals that have actually burned him in the past. He'll share a little bit from his new book called The Upside Down Leader. And so stay to the end and you'll get the actual framework that he uses with folks to help you find your own shadow leadership traits. So this is Billy Moyer, founder and CEO of SOS Leadership.
We tried to scale before we were ready because we didn't actually know what we wanted back then. We hired a few people, and our way of hiring was, hey, let's bring these folks on, let them, sell for us, let them do all the things that we didn't want to do, so we could just do the things that we like to do. And that just blew up in our face. We found out nobody can sell our business as good as we can. And we found out that we help other businesses with their people, but we really sucked with our own. So we were kind of controlling leaders. We wanted everything to be perfect. So basically everything now that we help other businesses and leaders, founders grow from, avoid, we did all that same stuff. So all those same mistakes. And so after we kind of crashed and burned with our initial wave of hiring, thinking other people were the solution, we kind of put our heads together and said, okay, what do we actually want here, right? What is our vision? And when we finally had that conversation, that was the turning point for our business. We realized, hey, our vision isn't to be, just this big deal, right? It isn't to be the next John Maxwell or, Ken Blanchard or Zig Ziglar, even though we love those folks. Our vision was to help leaders and help businesses grow however we could do that. And we had to first look in the mirror and help ourselves grow. And so that was probably about 3 or 4 years into our business. And that's when we created a brand new kind of revenue model that went away from, hey, let's charge a big chunk of money up front and do all this work and then go sell it again and do it again, right? We went to a more sustainable model, and that just, again, changed everything. It led to finding the right people, the right systems. And so it's interesting that often when we work with clients, we start out with, where do you want to go, right? What is your vision? We understand how important a vision is to any great organization. And just because you're the consultants, coaches that are helping other people understand their vision and come up with their vision doesn't mean that you know yours. And so that was a turning point for us when we actually, created a vision for ourselves.
And so what was this new revenue model? What was the old one? What was the new one? And can you quantify an impact?
Yeah. So I think we were tired all the time in the way that our old revenue model was. It was, kind of traditional. I started the business with my dad. He'd been doing this kind of work for years and years. And it was, hey, let's go, do this coaching, consulting, training type work. And it would be, this amount of classes, this amount of work with a client, and it would cost $25,000 or $50,000. That worked fine. But what it really did was we'd have 3 or 4 really big months and then, nothing. And that became really difficult for us to, plan for. And it was when we started clarifying our vision where we were like, there's all these companies that have these subscription-based type models, and thinking about the kind of lawyer type of model in terms of ongoing revenue, that retainer type model. So that's what we actually created, a retainer model that is a monthly fee for our clients. And we've got ranges of that model based on the needs, the size of the business. And now how that really impacted us is every year, we go into our year knowing that our baseline, what pays us, what pays our people, is covered. We do not go into a year without our baseline covered. And then everything that comes in is just profit, just growth, which is really awesome. So we kind of what we really did is just made our lives a lot easier. We're less stressed. We still have to sell, right? There's still times when we've got to bring on a new client here or there, but we're not so focused on, let's bring in a new client. We've got to get that next 50 grand, because our model is set up to allow us to, again, cover that baseline. And I love to help clients do the same thing. What is it about your business that you can do that will cover your base? Everybody's so focused on growth and scaling, and I love profitability, but profitability comes after, breaking even. And too often people are thinking about how can we grow our profits by 50%? And not only do they miss that, they miss actually how do we cover our baseline? And that's where, you make cuts and make all those difficult decisions. We never wanted to do that.
Yeah, interesting. And so a lot of folks listening, let's say, run marketing agencies where they'll do Facebook ads, Google ads, email marketing, etc. for 3, 5, 7K a month, right? Retainers, which sounds similar, but you figured out how to do it for consulting. And more interesting is you have a very unique talent model behind that. I haven't seen too much like this. Can you tell me about, how did this model come about? And then let's get into the weeds.
So our model came about because there are a lot of really talented coaches, consultants that are out there. And I think too often in business, we think our stuff is the best. I was going to say something else. I don't know if we can say that, but
Yeah, whatever you want.
our stuff's the best. So we're unique. Everybody should hire us. What we realize is there's so many of us out there that are just as good, right? So many consultants that are just as good as we are. What do we do better than them? Sell, right? It is hard to sell consulting. It is a very difficult sales process because what are you selling? Change, right? You could say you're selling growth, but no, right? What is a client of our consulting, what does a business have to do in order to get to the next level? They got to do something different. They got to change. People hate change. So how do you convince somebody to actually invest good money into themselves and their businesses? We know how to do that. So what we started to do is, rather than what we started with was, let's outsource the sales process. Oh, let's bring in somebody else to go generate leads, go sell this for us. Nobody could do it. But what did everybody want to do when they started working with us? Not sell. They wanted to consult and coach because they were talented in that. Our structure is essentially, we've brought on folks, our full-time folks that are coaches, consultants, former executives, folks that are really good consultants. They probably can't sell on their own. That's okay. Then we've met other coaches and consultants that do similar work to us, and we've helped them grow their business, teaching them how to sell. But we haven't brought them on to be full-time employees because, one, I don't want that headache. I help other businesses with their people issues. I don't want to have my own. So we brought in these coaches and consultants almost as freelancers, kind of on contract basis. My goal is to help them succeed. So when I need their services for a client, we bring them on, but it doesn't take away from their own business. And in fact, sometimes I just send a full client to them, take a little small fee for finding that business, and let them do their thing because I trust them. Again, I'm not going to do this for anybody, but these folks that are kind of freelancers for us, I know them, I like them, I trust them. A lot of them have worked with us for so long that they can do as good a job as us and often better, but they just can't sell. So we sell it, they deliver it, and we figure out ways to kind of collaborate, and we do what we really need to do, which is deliver great work to our clients so they get the results that they expect to get.
These part-time consultants are super interesting to me because the full-time makes sense. That's part of the standard model. How do you handle training them on? I imagine you have a specific method and a way of consulting these clients. For part-time folks, how do you get them to use your method if you do? How do you train them in it, track performance? How do you do all that for part-time folks?
So again, most of these folks, honestly, a lot of them have been clients of ours that then have decided to go into consulting. So they've seen us in action. I like our part-time folks to kind of have some level of control to be who they are. So we have kind of a formula that works, kind of a process, but it's very flexible because it has to be for clients, right? If we say, here's the 10-step process to transform your business, that's not going to always work for clients, right? We need to be able to adapt to where they are. So we train them, and here's what we try to do, right? Here is an answer for this, here's an answer for that. But mostly, you need to be able to trust your gut, trust the experience that you have. And often, we're collaborating with them. So myself or my dad who works with me or a couple other kind of our senior level coaches, we might run the show with a client, and we might utilize one of these other consultants to be, our support. And so we're running the show. They're kind of doing what they need to do to kind of support the client. And so it's a very collaborative process. But I would say the biggest thing that we do that allows us to be successful with this model is we don't fear competition. I think that is the biggest mistake that businesses make, leaders in business make, is they get so caught up in what their competition is doing, and they want to win so badly that they forget that the best way to win is to just do great work. And so we embrace competition. I want more great consultants, because more great consultants means more companies are going to utilize consultants and see that value, and then that will impact me. We can't work with everybody, nor do I want to. So I embrace competition, and good things come from that. And again, I think for listeners, I get it. It's hard when you see somebody that you think isn't as good as you doing really well. Embrace that. How can you make them maybe not a part of your team, but how can you collaborate with them? How can you learn from them? How can you help them grow? I've never embraced competition and had it go badly. Sometimes we get so caught up on people stealing our stuff that we realize that we should just give it away anyway, because it really isn't our stuff. It was created by someone else, and we just figured out how to use it for what we use it for.
Your model is fascinating because you're creating competition, right? But you still embrace it.
Exactly.
So you train these folks to use your methods and then kind of let them run free and use your methods in the wild. How's that work?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it works because we again are good at what we do, and again we're not going out there and putting this out in the open and saying, hey, anybody that wants to be a coach and consultant, come work with us, do our stuff, right? We actually went through a period of time where we built a coaching network and we charged people to be a part of it, and that worked well. But what we found out was, just by charging somebody doesn't mean that they're going to be able to be someone that we trust. And, so we went down that kind of license, almost franchise type model, and that wasn't a fit for us, even though our background is in franchising. So what we do is, we find these folks, and typically they find us, and we just build relationship, right? Leadership, which is what we believe is kind of our most important responsibility, right? Every business wants to grow, wants to scale, and we think it starts with all these different things, right? We think it starts with capital, right? It starts with leadership. Good leaders build good businesses. Those good businesses can scale. So we like to meet really good people that are good leaders themselves, and we want to help them grow. And there's the old saying by Zig Ziglar, if you help enough other people get what they want, that eventually you'll get what you want. And we found that to be really true in our business. And honestly, the only reason that I would bring on another coach or consultant as a full-time member of our team is because that's what they believe is most beneficial for them. Like, I've had those conversations, and some of our full-time folks, it's a great fit for them. But we still give them flexibility to do other things. If I'm talking with I have one example of someone who works closely with us, but she's built her own consulting business. And when she left her executive job, that was because I helped guide her. I said, hey, you should be doing what we do. You're good, right? You're better than me. Why aren't you doing this work? And I think you would enjoy it more. So at that moment, I could have said, come work for us. But the reality is, I think that would be a lid for her. I think she can do way better than we can. So instead of saying, come work for me, I said, let me help you build your business. And I think that will help support ours. But I think it will put you in the position to succeed at the highest level. And again, I think that's a leadership thing. Not everybody works that way, but it works well for us. And also, again, I'm not really interested in having 100 people that work for me that I've got to be responsible for them putting dinner on the table for their families. That's a challenge in itself, and that's not something that I wanted to build in my own business.
So you found something very interesting. So you had I don't know if you still do, you have a coaching network, basically, where coaches pay to go into this network. And so essentially coaches are paying to work for you. How did you figure that out? Because that sounds like a crazy law of physics that you just figured out, you cracked.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those out there, right? There's franchises that are specific to coaching. There's things like Vistage and Action Coach that have similar type models. But for us, it was, we know all these people. We were finding folks that were trying to get into this kind of work. And, if they're coming to us and wanting our help, we at that time thought, let's put a value to that, and that could help us build this network. Again, it worked. We built it to about 40 coaches. But the reason we shut down the paid version of that model is we just found that what they wanted more than anything, they were paying for us to help them sell. They couldn't sell, and they were great at what they do. So I looked at it and said, I don't want to have someone pay me to help them sell. Because I'm not a sales coach, right? I don't want to be. But what we can do is we can take their talent and we can help our business grow in the way that we want to grow it, while it also helps them grow. So they still pay us now, but it's just a different model, right? We're kind of paying them. It's not something that's ongoing. It's not something I look every year and say, oh, I have to absolutely pay these coaches this amount. Other than my employees, that's the only people I'm responsible for paying. But for these folks, it's, hey, you know what? If I have an opportunity in Chicago, well, I'm not based in Chicago. My business, my full-time folks are in the Central Texas area. Even though our work can be remote, we do like to have a physical presence at times with our clients. I don't want to go to Chicago every week, every month. So I'd rather take a coach that I have there and say, hey, you're going to be the face of this. Maybe we're going to work with the CEO, but you're going to do, all the work with the rest of the team. And what does that do for me? Well, if it's a $10,000 a month consulting gig and I immediately take 20% because I sold it, and then I'm also going to be a part of it, so I take maybe another 20%, and then they do all the work, I get $4,000 to do very little work. I don't mind giving them $6,000. It works well for us. And sometimes people say you're leaving money on the table. Again, you have to have money to leave money on the table.
Yeah, you're getting your time back.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I heard you say that you don't want a group of people that you're responsible for, right? But you're responsible for the outcome that they deliver. And so how do you marry those two ideas together?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not easy. It's why we don't have hundreds of these folks out there, because that would be really difficult to manage. We've got a core group of about, like I said, 40 folks or so. It starts with the fact that we're rarely ever just going to say, this is your client, right? If they're working with us, even though they have their own business, they're a part of SOS Leadership. So if I have a client and I say, okay, hey, John from Chicago, you are going to be kind of the lead person on this client with me. Well, they're SOS, right? All signs of everything else that they do go away with this client. And, I'm responsible for the outcome. So I have to be engaged enough to make sure things go the direction that they need to go. But again, I have trust in them that they're going to follow our process, that they've got the experience to do what's necessary. And we're going to be checking back in, right? We've got a Slack channel. We'll create a channel for every client. Hey, we're in this together. I need to know what's going on. I don't need to know every little detail, but I need to know enough to make sure that we're making progress. And that's also why I like to make sure one of our lead coaches is working directly with the executive, the founder, the owner, whoever they may be, because that gives us enough of a window inside of the business to know the work that our other person is doing, right? And to guide them to go in the right direction. So again, we're not fully stepping out of this. And if we were to do that, that would be a referral. And I'd say, hey, I've got this opportunity. We're not going to touch it, but I'm going to send it to you, and it won't be SOS. It'll be your business. I would do that too, and we have. But if I'm tied to it, someone from my full-time team is going to be a part of it to ensure that the quality is there.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like you have a strategist, a lead coach, etc. That lead coach runs the project, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah, they're basically the project manager, and their role as project manager is to, be the go-to for the founder owner, but then also ensure everything else happens appropriately. And hey, if I'm in that position, I better know a little bit about what's going on, because if I'm talking to the founder and they say something that I don't know, that's not a good look either. So I've got to know. So I'm involved enough, but I'm not spending 10 hours a week on a client. I might be spending 2 hours a month.
Got it. So you have, the way you structure it is, for your per client, you have a lead coach who overlooks the client, and then the team is made up of the doers, let's call it, or the executionists are made up of contractors.
For the most part, yes.
Yes. And these contractors are in person?
Ideally in person. There's some folks that we're fine with being remote. If we're client facing, right? So if these contractors are facing the clients, ideally they could be in person. So we do, utilize some offshore talent for process creation, for report generating, for analytics, these types of things that we might do, things that we're delivering on. But ideally, those folks are not client facing. They'll be in the background. So if we are, we're a time for dollars business. I understand that, right? There is a limit to what we can or how we can scale. But at the same time, just because we're time for dollars doesn't mean we've got to, have our most expensive people spend all of their time with each of these clients, right? For me, I'll be client facing the amount I need to be, but anything that comes outside of that, somebody else should do that work.
Yeah.
And, that's why using folks from overseas or, there's so much great talent that's all around the world awesome. That can do everything that we need. Just because they can't be client facing doesn't mean we can't use them. Again, that goes into the system that you've created. And I know in your business, Brian, you understand outsourcing, right? We work with a lot of clients that have never outsourced anything, right? They are so used to everything being in person. One of the things we've done really well with them is help them create the right systems so they can outsource. Because, I have an attorney client that years ago, when we started working with them, we were talking about outsourcing, and they said, "Oh, we can't do that. Yeah, we tried it once and it was terrible." And I said, "Okay, well, walk me through what that looked like." And they hired somebody from South America. They didn't give them anything to do. They just let them sit there for a month. And then they got frustrated because they thought they weren't doing anything. So whose fault was that this didn't work? So we created the system. We embraced remote. We have the right communication tools. And now this attorney's office that has 4 offices around Texas, they've got 15 total folks from overseas. They're wanting to do more. They're talking about, let's open up an office in Mexico. So they're embracing it. But again, most people don't embrace it because they think that they have to do with this talent exactly what they do with the talent that's on site. And it's just a different relationship, at least from our experience.
And how, because I think what you're bringing up, the same we see with a lot of clients too, is it's a systems problem or a lack of nuance problem. How do you explain that? How do you figure out whether a role makes sense to be onshore versus offshore?
It takes time, and again, it depends on the client and their level of openness. Again, we've got some that want everything to be offshore, and again, to me, it's we're thinking about what actually needs to be done. Sometimes there's a role that is one role, and we look and say, "Oh, this can't be offshore for this reason." But then when we look at that reason, we look and say, "But that's only like 10% of the role." So that doesn't mean it shouldn't be offshored, right? Right? Let's use 90% of it. Let's send it offshore, and then the other 10% we'll use our team here. embraced that with another client that was afraid that there wasn't going to be the same level of quality. So we took one of their case managers and said, hey, you're going to be the lead of this offshore team. So you are no longer the case manager over just these clients, right? You are now the case manager over the offshore team of case managers. They're doing 90% of the work. You're doing the 10% that can't be done offshore, right? So systems, all that stuff. First, with the clients that we work with, and I think this would speak to your audience, got to understand in business, right? All organizations are only made up of two things, systems and people. So every problem is either a systems problem or a people problem. I think the problem that I see with most of the clients we work with is they automatically think every problem is a people problem. We need another person, right? Oh, this person isn't good at their job. Oh, this person did this or that. Most problems are system problems. Organizations are perfectly designed for the results that they're getting. How do we improve the results? Change the design. So yes, maybe we restructure, we put people in the right seats, but also let's make sure that we've laid out for them what the expectations are, how they can meet those expectations, and those step-by-step processes that I know, Brian, you know a lot about. Yeah. That's the stuff that makes organizations run and then also makes them scalable, right? Sometimes we think, oh, I'm just an attorney, I'm just an engineer. My business isn't scalable because we're a service-based business. That's BS, right? Every business is scalable if you have systems that can scale with you.
Right. Yeah, and so from your structure, because I was in a similar boat to what you're mentioning. So in when I was consulting, I was that team leader, and then we'd have a strategic conversation with the clients, and all like the more execution type, like less strategic, less client relationship building stuff, we would send overseas. And then I'd wake up the next day and have the execution done and can have a strategic conversation with a client again. And so we were able to get way more feedback loops really quickly from that same perspective. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because what clients actually want, there's a difference between what they want and what they need, right? The deliverables, the systems that you help them build, that's what they need. But what they actually want is a connection with whoever it is that they're working with. So the number one thing that I give a client, especially that owner, founder, leader, is someone to talk to. That's what they want. And then we help solve problems, right? We put things in place, but
right.
They know all that stuff's happening. But anytime somebody refers me directly, they say, oh gosh, you got to work with Billy in SOS. He's always there for me, right? He always, shows up. He answers my calls. I don't know how I operated without his guidance. I barely do any of the work, but that's what they remember.
Yeah, because you do the relationship and the strategic type work.
Exactly, which is the key. Relationships are always the key.
And how do you guys structure the execution work, right? The literal fingers on keyboards doing the task. Is that offshored or is that run by your contractor pool?
It'd be run by our full-time pool. Some of our contractor pool might do pieces of that, and then we have kind of our offshore folks that we'll delegate to. So typically we'll start something. So like if it's something analytics driven, all right, hey, we're going to build out these, KPIs, but we wouldn't use our offshore team to build them out. We would build them out. We would then figure out how to run these reports often within whatever system our client's using. Often they don't have a system, so we have to actually build that for them. And then we would pull in our offshore folks to do that ongoing, right? We don't want to be pulling reports every week for a client. But so again, we try to outsource the tasks, the deliverables, the things that, might take us 20 minutes, but would take our offshore team an hour. That's a great deal for me. I'll take that all day because I really like my 20 minutes back.
Yeah. And so how do you decide, like what types of roles or what bundles of tasks? I think a job is just a bundle of tasks, right? What types of roles do you put offshore versus your contractor pool who meets with clients?
Yeah, I think basically anything that is a deliverable, a system that's created, reports, data entry, hiring, not maybe interviewing, but we help clients often with hiring because small businesses don't have good hiring processes. So we'll put in the process, but then we'll actually execute for them. And posting a position, following up with folks digitally, doing written interviews, all that, I'm going to use an offshore person for that. That doesn't need to be us. Sometimes even phone interviews we'll do. But, in-person interviews, true virtual interviews, those would be us. Would be a part of that. And I say us because we're doing that with the client. So really, other than solving a problem for a client, that's the only thing we wouldn't outsource to someone offshore. I don't like our clients not having the opportunity to meet us in person, even though we do have some clients we've never met in person. But that's not really the way I like to work. To me, if I get an hour with somebody in person, the rest can be virtual, and it could really improve things for us because we just build a different level of trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's way easier to build trust in person. Okay. And so it sounds like, wow. So you have your hiring overseas, your analytics overseas, problem solving is onshore, strategic client relationships is, so a different way. Strategic and client relationships is you and the case lead.
Exactly.
Right? And then the problem solving is your contractor pool, and then the delivery, ongoing ops or ongoing execution is offshore. So that's hiring manager, like your hiring manager, analytics, etc. Did I miss anything? Like what else goes onshore versus contractor versus case lead?
I mean, for the actual work that we're doing with clients, that's about right. Our own operations, accounting, our own stuff, that's mostly offshore. Our CPA is in the States, but our bookkeeper, all that, we offshore all that.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, that's super helpful. And then, so it sounds like your advantage is that there's a lot of great coaches, consultants out there, but you guys crush the sales side. What do you guys do differently to find? So your target clients are chiropractors, attorneys, etc. What do you guys understand about sales that most coaches and consultants don't?
That there's no difference between selling coaching and consulting and doing coaching and consulting. It's the exact same thing. So people are going to buy something that they believe in, they think you can actually do, right? So if I say, hey, come hire SOS Leadership, we do all these great things, and just spout those things off, maybe somebody will buy. But typically people are coming to us because they have a problem, they want to grow, they can't grow, they need to be more sustainable, whatever it may be. And often they've been referred to by someone else. Well, if I just say, yep, you heard from this client that we're good, here's your proposal, start paying us and we'll help you. Again, maybe that works for some, but that's not how we do it, right? I'm going to go take them through a process where they're going to get a piece of us at no charge, right? I'm going to show them the goods. And, to me, every conversation I have with somebody, whether they're a prospect or not, I don't like to predetermine prospects. I'm going to treat them like they're a client. I'm going to give them the full benefit of me, right? My brain. I'm going to help them solve a problem. So that's what I like to do for other coaches and consultants, right? There's this myth out there, at least in my world, that you have to charge for everything, right? You have to, value yourself appropriately. Well, cool. Well, if I have to charge somebody for an hour of my time, and by doing that, it means that they're not going to then pay us for the next 3 years of our time, that's a bad deal, right? So I probably give away more than most do, but it's because you're not selling this kind of work. You're proving to them that you can do it. You're proving to them that you are a resource for them. So if I can solve a small problem in a couple conversations, they're more likely to continue to work with us, right? If they can see I'm somebody that they enjoy communicating with, that they could count on, right? They're likely to work with us. So I think that's the biggest thing. I get it, right? No one wants to give their stuff away for free, but it's a good way to prove that you are what you say that you are. And also, to me, I do this work because I like it. I like helping people grow. I like helping businesses grow. Actually, I like the people side more than the business side. That's fine. But when I can see somebody elevate their leadership and it improves their business, but it also helps them in their personal life, that's what gets me going. So that's what I do all the time, right? If I'm going to go have somebody meet somebody for a drink, I'm going to be there to be a resource for them. And they're not paying me. If I get a free drink out of it, great. But that's the key, right? Believe in what you do, believe in what you're selling so much that you could give it away for free, and then somebody will buy it from there.
Interesting. And so is your, call it your lead magnet, your initial discussion, or kind of going through the sales motion a little bit, is your first conversation with them, obviously I'm sure there's a discovery call, but then is there a free workshop where you solve an initial problem? Is that your lead magnet basically?
It depends on how they're coming in. Yeah, sometimes we'll do, a brief little strategy session or workshop with an executive team, or I might just meet the founder owner 3 or 4 times before we move, right? Sometimes they'll ask right away for a proposal. I hold that back because if I give a proposal and we've only met one time and they see, oh yeah, that's going to cost me $7,500 a month. Well, that guy was nice, but I don't think he's worth that. Well,
Interesting.
again, they're gonna immediately shut down. The other thing is I don't know what they need after one conversation. So the more I give them, the more I can understand what they actually need, so I can structure my relationship in the right way, because that's what sets us up for success. Like, I don't want to work with somebody that's not going to do what we ask of them, right? I've fired far more clients than have ever fired me. I've only had one. So, and it's because, right, I like my success rate. We're good at what we do. And if the client isn't doing what they do with what we're asking of them, then that's a problem, right? One of the commitments that I have clients make when working with us is I let them know that we will work as hard on their business as they do, but never harder, because that's not fair, right? It's not our business. I'm not benefiting from the upside. It's your business. So I'll work hard, but if I find myself working harder than you, either sell me the business or I'm going to get out.
I love that. I love that. And how do you, I imagine you've changed your money model, to use Alex Hormozy's term, or you've changed your offer over time. Have you changed your terms over time in terms of like, do you do minimums? Do you do guarantees? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, when we first started, we said we had a 3-month minimum, but really, we would take anybody. We moved that to 4. Now we're at a 6-month minimum. I think that's an appropriate amount of time to get some traction. Guarantees, I think most guarantees in consulting business are BS. Some of this is hard to really quantify because, if I say, hey, you're guaranteed to grow your revenue 20%, well, I'm not helping with sales. Like, I'm in different parts of their business. So the guarantee is simply that we will partner with them to help them get to the next level while we're working with them. So we're going to roll up our sleeves. I'm not a finance guy, right? That's not our background. But if there's a problem with their accounting, we're going to help them fix that problem. So that's our guarantee, that we are my favorite line of any job description. And we actually have all of our clients move this to the very first line. It's all other duties as assigned. It's my favorite line, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to wear multiple hats, but everybody has to be willing to do whatever it takes to help the business grow. That's our guarantee as consultants. We will do whatever it takes to help your business grow. Again, provide that you are willing to do the same for your business.
Interesting. And so, okay, so your business has evolved a lot to today. What does your business look like going forward? Like moving to the next stage of SOS leadership. What does it look like over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, when you are in this kind of work and things can kind of run based on whatever the owner is excited about. So our business has grown as I started with my dad and, built around what he liked. Now it's more built around what I enjoy doing. When we were, heavier into operations than we maybe are now, it was because I enjoyed that more. So our business shifts based on what I enjoy, because I don't want to work on something that I'm not excited about. So the book, The Upside Down Leader that I wrote, that's kind of where our business is going, or at least a piece of it. The book itself is about leadership, and it's built around things that the shadow side of leadership, the things that I've learned about myself and about the leaders that I've worked with, the things that hold businesses back from next level growth. So I see our business continuing to go in that direction. One thing that we've dabbled in over the last couple of years that we are always trying to do is a little bit more of a private equity type model where we're not just having clients that pay us. We find opportunities to invest, get a piece of the business, and then do what we do that takes them to the next level and be able to benefit that way. Different model, but it is one that we've dabbled in and had some success. Again, it's not one we're going to jump right into with someone we just met, right? But the reality is, how does private equity tend to work, right? They acquire a business, at least the good private equity groups acquire a business, they invest in it, try to grow it to the next level, and then they flip it, right? Well, a lot of the things that they do in that growth mode are the things that we do for our clients. So why couldn't we have that similar type of setup where we invest in them and get them to that next level, and then with some sort of flip, we get a benefit from that. So that's a level that we are always headed towards. We've talked about it for a long time. Again, had a little bit of success. We've also gotten burned, but I think that's probably not just the next 12 months, but that's even beyond, because we meet a lot of people that are really good at what they do, but they don't know how to grow their business. Well, maybe they can pay us, maybe they can't. But if there's an opportunity for us to have an even bigger partnership, we want to take that. And I even have a relationship with a capital raising group in the Austin area, and we collaborate a lot with clients because we see that as a next level. So that's not a formal thing yet, but I could see us going in that direction down the line.
Yeah, especially because you guys have such an advantage. You can look under the hood,
Exactly.
see what it looks like, and then look for business that I like to call it specifically incompetent. They're incompetent at things that you're great at. Right? You get a piece of it and you take it to scale. What does that investment look like? Is it sweat equity where you're getting paid in equity rather than cash, or is it you get the cash and personally invest after?
It depends on the setup of the company. It typically would start with sweat. Most of the time, though, it probably would be a client that has already been paying us and they want to go to an even, greater level. The idea of going from $5,000 to $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month, that's not something that they could do. And then we might structure something creatively from there. So again, we haven't gone so far to say, hey, this is a completely separate business. We want to kind of create our own little mini PE firm. But I think there is an opportunity there. And again, it would be something we have to be careful with, because there's also an opportunity for somebody to look and say, oh, cool, we can get you for free or just a piece of our business. Not every business is actually saleable. Yeah. We can create any business to be saleable, but we also want to make sure that it's a fit. And for us, those fits tend to be folks in kind of the home services, franchise type businesses, franchisors. Franchisors are getting picked up by private equity every day. We are often collaborating with them, with private equity, to help those processes. So again, that's where I think we take this thing. But the other thing for me is I like helping people grow, and I'm very much unwilling at this point in my life and my career to do anything, invest any time, energy, and money in something that I don't enjoy.
Yeah, interesting. And how did you get burned? What was that story?
Just, hey, mostly us being stupid and, handshakes, all the stuff that we tell clients never to do. Hey, we're taking less of a fee and we'll get a piece of this business. We're going to take it to the next level. We got it to another level and didn't get paid. Could have gotten the equity because there was enough there that we could have legally gotten what was ours. But at the same time, life's too short, and I'd rather move on to things that have greater opportunity. Because what I found out is sometimes you don't actually want a piece of someone's business. And through that relationship, how it kind of went sour, I realized, why would I fight for something I absolutely don't want? Because I do not like these people. If somebody's going to treat you that way, why would you want to be in bed with them, right?
Yeah. And so what would you do differently? Because a lot of folks listening to this are interested in eventually building a holdco type thing, which is
Yeah.
kind of what you're doing, just with sweat equity rather than like paid equity. What would you do differently?
Clear terms,
Yeah.
everything in writing, getting attorneys involved from the start. Sometimes people say, I just don't like attorneys. Let's do this way. No, that's not how it works. Attorneys have a purpose. Let's use them. I've got a go-to now that we use all the time, early on in a relationship. But then also being more realistic. I always say there's a 11th commandment that we tend to break when it comes to business, and it's thou shalt not kid thyself. If you look at something and you're like, what could I do with this business? You're kidding yourself, right? If it's not successful, there's a reason. And if I've already looked under the hood, right? Or if there's a client that wants to go this equity route because they just can't afford to pay us, there's probably a reason. Let's trust the gut and move on to something that will be successful.
Interesting. So is the private equity model your focus in the short term, or is it more of a long-term focus?
I think it's more of a long-term focus, again, because we're not going to scoop up 5 to 10 groups a year, companies a year, but we're going to be strategic with it. And right now, I would only go in that direction for someone that I have a relationship with. We've worked with, they've paid us, I understand their financials. I can see that there's a gap that we can fill. And I don't want to work with somebody that already does what we do. I'm not filling in a gap then, right? I want to be able to provide that value. And so there's opportunity there. But again, it's not, I like to be patient because good things tend to come to those who wait, right?
Yeah.
And I get it. Sometimes you got to jump on opportunities, but I think too often we jump on the first opportunity and miss out on a much better one.
Yeah, that's true. And so okay, so that's a long-term focus. What are you guys focused on now? And how do you have to change your business to scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably not a great point for the folks that are listening, and because this isn't what I would tell my clients to do, but our focus right now is just sustaining what we currently do, right? Because we have a model that works. We do well. We've got good clients. They continue to come in. So we're not really as much looking to scale our business because we're focused on helping our clients scale theirs, which is why that long-term PE type model makes sense, because that's the way that we can truly grow. But for now, my focus personally is, getting this book out there because it builds relationships. It's a story, my story that I believe in, that I think leaders need to hear. And I think when they hear that, ideally, that's all they need. They can kind of explore the shadow side of their leadership. They can better understand how they can become a better version of themselves at home, at work, etc. And I think that will lead to business for us. What that business looks like, I'm not sure. But anytime I've ever put anything out into the world, good stuff has come from it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You mentioned the shadow side a few times. Tell us about the shadow side.
I'll kind of put this in language that makes sense to the folks that are probably listening. So when a company grows, right, you go from 1 to 5 million, 5 to 10, 10 to 50, whatever. People always think, okay, the way we do that is through strategy. Oh, we got to improve our marketing, right? We've got to invest more capital. That's not typically the biggest challenge that people face in going to the next level. It's the leader, right? It's understanding that as leaders, we have gaps. So growth in a business does not hide your gaps. It exposes your gaps. So early on, let's think about it, right? If you're $1 million business, how do you win? Hustle, drive. You outwork problems, right? You outmuscle decisions. You just push things through. But at some point, that same drive that built your business will start to limit it, right? That's the law of the lid, right? Your business cannot outgrow you. That's why most founders, right? Startups, most founders end up becoming ex-founders. Why? They become the lid. Startup people are startup people. They don't tend to be sustain, scale to the next level people. So I think that lid is what I call the upside down. And that's what this book is about, that shadow side of leadership. It's when ego starts masquerading as excellence, when accountability turns into blame, right? And you've seen that in small businesses. Hey, why didn't you do this? Or you should have done this. High standards become fear when you are so focused on your part, right? Your ownership, that you have your fingerprints on everything, right? These are the type of clients that we're working with, owners that want to have their hands on everything. And the reality is I had a post on this on LinkedIn this week, right? The enemy of growing is knowing. So once you think you know it all, you're screwed. And when you think you know it all, you're caught in that shadow. We all have the leader that we want to be, the leader that we're called to be, who we are at our best, but we have the opposite of that too, that shadow side of us that shows up when we're tired, we're stressed out. That's what makes us more controlling, gets us caught up in our ego, all those things. And to me, the purpose of this book is so we can put the shadow out in the open. We can own it, because once we own it, we can work to move past it and lead in what I call daylight. And daylight is really where businesses can grow, where they can evolve. It's rooted in clarity, humility, ownership. I think sometimes when we talk about some of these things, and I've had this with clients, hey, that's really good stuff, but it's kind of soft, right? It's a little more soft skills. Nah, this is hard stuff, right? This is understanding that the problem is probably you, right? And not you on the outside, you on the inside. That's the work that we have to do as leaders, right? If we do the inner work, then it will ensure that our outcomes from the outer work that we do are, have the biggest impact, right? Have the best possible return. But it all starts inside.
Do you have an exercise, as an example, to figure out what traits you have in the shadow version of you?
Yeah.
And how to bring that to light?
So it starts with, just a really simple way of looking at it. It all starts with putting on paper who you want to be, right? Who you are in the light. So any workshop you've probably been to that's around leadership will have you write down some sort of a personal leadership mission. And it's great, right? I love doing that. But the reason we do that is because that's who we aspire to be. That's the positive, right? We should know who we want to be at our best. So it starts there. But then we also have to put on paper the opposite, our shadow mission, right? Who can we be at our worst? We start to notice those things. If we can't put them on paper, we've got to ask the folks around us, when I'm not at my best, how do I show up? And if we put that on paper, so we essentially write down the opposite of our personal leadership mission, then we can start to notice when we drift, because that's the problem, right? This would be easy if it was sometimes I'm in my daylight mission, sometimes I'm in my shadow mission. It's not like that, right? Typically, we're 1 degree off. So if you think about a vehicle, right, we have to get our vehicles aligned, right? And alignment's an important piece, because if you're 1 degree off in your car's alignment, you might drift off course. It's the same thing for us as leaders, right? If we're 1 degree off, we probably don't even notice it, but we start to drift off course. And when we drift, the results end up not being there. Relationships get, to be a challenge, right? We tend to, again, show up as the worst version of ourselves. So the reality is leaders in organizations have a shadow side. And if you're not careful, the shadow side of you ends up running your organization, and then it runs it into darkness. And we know where that leads.
And so is the thesis then, make sure I'm understanding it, the daylight side is who we are at our best. Shadow side is who we are at our worst. We don't really know, as leaders, we don't really know when which side comes out. Like we're like a fish who doesn't know what water is, right?
Exactly.
And so we tend to drift more towards the shadow, or who we are at our worst, without realizing it.
Exactly.
Our business is just a representation of us. It's an external representation of depends on the leader. And so the business, if we start to spend more time at our worst, our business starts to spend more time at our worst, and we don't know this.
Exactly.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's important because sometimes we look and say, okay, the shadow is just bad. And it's not the case, right? Because it's a part of us, right? Every part of us has the ability to be good, but it doesn't mean that we always are good. So when we are not at our best, right, we're tired, we're stressed out, we've got too much on our plate, we tend to say things we shouldn't say, do things we shouldn't. Again, we show up at our worst. And then if we show up at our worst for our people, what do? They then show up at their worst because people become like their leader. So that's why the shadow ends up running your organization. An example of what that looks like, the book itself is basically my long shadow mission, how I've shown up at my worst, right? Everything, because I like modeling things for people. So rather than saying, hey, here's this idea of shadow, the shadow side of leadership, here's these examples from these clients, I just wrote it about me, right? So I have a high belief in people, but I also have a style that can be very direct, very dominant, very controlling. And that can show up in a business, right? I also have a side of myself that can like the attention, like the limelight, can want to have my fingerprints on everything. And so I give examples from my own leadership. And, one time when I, was working with a business and I was running the show for them, running their operations, I put in place this brand new operating system that I made a big deal about. I said, this is going to transform everything. And it started to actually do that. But then I got in my own head a little bit and I started to a little bit just not like that they didn't need me anymore.
Yeah.
And so guess what I did? I got rid of the system. I said, you know what? This isn't working. Let's get rid of it. So I spent all this time, energy, and money to put this system in place. And then when I stepped back and actually saw it working, I didn't like it. So I got rid of it. And that just frustrated people and it screwed a lot of relationships up. And the business itself was not better. But for that little bit of time, I felt better about myself. That's the shadow.
Interesting. And so who is this book for? Like who's the type of person, like the avatar, and then what's the problem that this book solves?
Yeah, I think this book is for anyone that's leading in any way, but specifically someone that's leading in an organization. Because when you're leading, right, that's a weight that you carry. And when you're carrying that weight of, people that are following you, people that are going to become just like you, it's hard to always show up at your best. And this book really helps you understand that that's not just always you, right? It's just something that we all have. And really the problem this solves is it helps you understand that when you as a leader become that lid, that hustle is what builds your business, but humility is what scales it, right?
Interesting.
It's really about moving from I am the solution to I build the solution. This book gives you examples of how you can do that. And yeah, I think anybody that's in a leadership position, whether it be professionally or just a parent, will probably relate with pieces of this book, even though it's written about my stories. Because when I started writing it, I thought it was going to be all about my clients. And then I realized, no, it should be about me because I'm worse than them, right? The shadow side of me is not great. And so, I did that. And, my hope is that people don't read the book and say, oh, all right, Billy, when he's in his shadow, he is, he's just not a really good leader. What I want them to do is read the stories, read the points that I make, and see themselves in it and see how they can use that to write down their own shadow side and own it and move past it. Because if they can do that, then they can understand they themselves will never be perfect leaders. Successful organizations aren't run by perfect leaders, right? They're led by people that are very self-aware. And so growth exposes your shadow, but it also gives you an opportunity to step into the light. And that's what this book can help people do.
Interesting. So it sounds like this book is for a leader who's in transition, right? So someone who's hit a cap and they know that they need to transform into a fundamentally different person to get to the next stage.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, right? And here's the reality, not to be the, hey, person that says my market is everyone, but the reality is every leader is in transition because we should always be trying to become a better version of who we are because that allows us to show up better for our people, which will improve our businesses as well.
Got it. That's helpful. And so how can people get this book and where can people contact you?
Yeah, so you can get the book at theupsidedownleaderbook.com. It's also available on Amazon for a little while. It'll be 99 cents on Amazon Kindle. And if you go to theupsidedownleaderbook.com, you can find my contact information there. Obviously, my business is SOS Leadership, but I've got a lot of things that I've got my hands in. And, my purpose in being here with you is just to be of service to your listeners and to connect with you. I'd love for people to check out the book, but mostly I just want people to be able to hear that their leadership matters and they have a great opportunity in front of them to not just build a business, but to build a better life for themselves and everyone around them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This has been great, Billy. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely.